This is a podcast about our lived experience, which unfortunately includes infant death and subsequent mental health struggles. Please take good care of yourself and only listen if this content feels safe for you right now. We'll still be here when you're ready.
Hi, I'm Judith.
And I'm Alina. We both lost babies to SIDS in winter 2021.
In the throes of grief, I reached out to a stranger on the internet and our friendship was born.
In the years since, we've been working hard to survive, rebuild, and navigate the continual challenges that have come our way, including divorce,
Job loss,
dating while bereaved,
moving multiple times,
health scares,
pregnancy and parenting a living child,
starting new jobs, and so much more.
We are tired.
Happily ever after is out of the question for us, but this podcast documents our journeys to happier ever after because we believe life after loss is worth living.
So join us as we laugh, cry until we laugh.
Welcome to As Long As I'm Living podcast.
We're so glad you're here.
So listeners, this is the first episode. This happens to be the first episode on the calendar that is being sponsored because when you sponsor an episode of As Long As I'm Living podcast, you get to choose which week it's on. And we've gotten quite a few sponsorships, but they've all been for October, November, December timeframe so far. So this is our first one and it's going to seem silly, but it's sponsored by Quinn's grandma for Quinn's birthday.
Happy birthday, Quinn.
Happy birthday, Quinn. This episode of As Long As I'm Living podcast is sponsored in honor of Quinn, my baby, but not by me. It was sponsored by Quinn's grandma. Who adores Quinn and whom Quinn adored. So we asked her to tell us, and this is, by the way, the questions that we've asked Quinn's grandma to fill out are the same questions we would ask you to fill out if and when you sponsor an episode of the podcast. So this is exactly the kind of things that you would get. We would get to learn about your baby too. Some of these things you might know about Quinn and some might be new. So we asked Quinn's grandma to tell us a little bit about him. She said, Quinn is my sweet grandson, and she associates him with hedgehogs, owls, books, and Long Beach Island, which is, it's a beach in New Jersey. And we didn't get the chance to bring him there, but we did remember him there the first summer after he died. We went on a family vacation there, and some of his ashes are scattered in the ocean off of LBI. So I'm not surprised that that's a special spot for him and her together. We asked her to tell us a little bit about your baby's family, Quinn's family. She says Quinn has amazing parents and a whole extended family who love and miss him. It's true. So Quinn's grandma, this is Kaylee's mom. Quinn has, you guys know, I dedicate this podcast to him every week. He also has this grandma, Betsy, who is sponsoring this episode. A particular memory I have with Quinn and Betsy, even though she didn't put this in here, is the Thanksgiving that Quinn was alive, we spent with Kaylee's family, and it was one of the best weeks of Quinn's entire life. He started sleeping through the night, and just having like Quinn's grandma there, I mean, all of them, the whole family, Kaylee, her sisters, and her parents, but especially Quinn's grandma was literally the best because Quinn's grandma was like so helpful. Literally, he would make a grunt and she was like, I'm on it. I'm changing his diaper. I'll feed him a bottle. She just would walk him around the house and like hold him up to like everything on the wall, hold him up to the mirror, hold him up to the Christmas tree, hold him up to the fireplace, hold him up to the bushes outside. And he was just like so entertained all week and so doted on, not just by Betsy, but it was a really special week. And I know we all love and miss him dearly. I feel really lucky to still have Quinn's extended family in my life and in his life. He's the luckiest little boy. Well, he's dead, so he's not that lucky, but he's the luckiest little dead baby to have the family that he does. And Betsy has asked that we also mention Empty Arms as an organization that's been a wonderful support to me specifically. So I will be linking them in our show notes and on our stories. And you can go to our Instagram to see a picture of baby Quinn with his grandma Betsy. One last thing I wanted to share about Quinn and Betsy is you guys may have seen my Quinn towel, which I use all the time. It is my official beach towel. It says Quinn on it. It was given as a gift to Quinn from Quinn's grandparents. So I also think about Quinn's grandma when I use that towel. And Quinn, of course.
Thank you so much, Betsy, for sponsoring this week's episode in honor of Quinn and his upcoming birthday, September 22nd. We love you, Quinn, and we miss you. And we're really, really glad that Betsy thought of sponsoring so we could talk about it more.
And listener, if you would like to sponsor an episode of As Long as I'm Living podcast, you can do so at buymeacoffee.com/ALAIL podcast. And the link is in the description. Okay, so that was so fun to have a Quinn's birthday episode sponsored by, in honor of Quinn. Very cute. But that was so nice for me to reminisce about memories of Quinn with his grandma. And I thought I'd take just 2 minutes to reminisce about a couple other memories of him for his birthday. One of the things I wanted to share, you have heard from a couple of my friends on this podcast. The only one who actually got to meet him, two got to meet him in person. Zia Leah, who you heard from on the podcast, she came and she got to see him from 6 feet away. A couple of times, actually. She brought me so much food when Quinn was born, and she has fed me so many times since he died. It breaks my heart that she never got a chance to hold him, and holding her living son earlier this year was really bittersweet, but really special. She still spends time at Quinn's Lake by herself. I texted her the other day and said, "Hi, I hope you had a wonderful birthday." And she said, "I did. I spent it with Quinn." She went to the lake and got a coffee and spent it with Quinn at his lake. She's just the best. And then I have another friend who got to meet him in person from 6 feet away. We have the absolute worst fucking photo of us. I look like hell on earth, like death warmed over because I had just given birth. We drove an hour and a half to get there. I'm holding him up. It was fucking COVID. It was terrible. It was so special. And then, of course, Quinn's family. My brother, my favorite memory of Quinn with my brother is he was obsessed with my brother's beard. He would sit there and touch his beard, lift his little hand up and touch his beard. He was so confused by how beardy his face was. My dad, Quinn, had just started to really laugh a lot when he died. And I would say over 50% of the laughs he gave were at my dad. He thought my dad was the funniest human on earth.
Well, your dad is kind of a funny guy.
He is. And my mom, she, just as I was saying, Betsy doted on Quinn. My mom was the same, was all over any sound he made. Did he need socks? Does he need a snack? Does he want to be held? Does he need this? She was all over it. And not in a smothery way, in a really loving grandmother way. She got to spend the last week of his life with him, babysitting him while I was going back to work. And we have some of the cutest pictures of him that were taken on her phone. Thank God we used her phone for some pictures because my phone took the literal worst photographs on planet Earth. All the good ones of Quinn were not taken on my phone because I'm cheap. And now I have a good phone because I can't do that again. I know how much it matters. And then, of course, Kaylee and her family. One of my favorite memories of Kaylee with Quinn is she read him Dune, the book Dune. So Quinn was a little sci-fi baby. He got read the goodnight story of Dune.
I bet it put him to sleep.
Oh, it sure did. I actually kind of forgot about that until there was hype around the movie. And I was like, oh my God. And it felt like such a nice, brand new memory. It's so weird how that happens. Sometimes something occurs to you and I was like, oh my God, Quinn heard Dune. I don't know. It felt nice that he got a chance to be part of the zeitgeist and paying attention to that. And yes, her sisters spent some time with us and read him tons of books. And he has the best family. And I feel really, really, really grateful for all of them. And I'm sorry that I'm only touching on just a couple of relationships here. I'm really trying to talk about the people who got to meet him. Oh, and my Aunt Susie. He was so confused. Both my mom and my Aunt Susie, they would talk and he would look at them why do you sound like my mom? He would be like, you're not my mom, but you sound like my mom.
That's so cute.
It's very cute. And my Aunt Susie, she doted on us when we were kids. She doesn't have kids of her own. And I know she was so excited to get to be a great aunt to her niece's kid. And it was obviously really, really sad when he died. I mean, for so many reasons, but for that in particular. But if you tuned into this episode, you've already seen the title. And there's another big thing to talk about today. I won't bury the lead any further. You've probably been waiting with bated breath for me to say that I am pregnant with Quinn's little sister, who is coming in February, hopefully alive.
I feel like this is a big day.
It's a big day. A couple other things that I want to say before we keep going. One, if you are one of my coworkers and you are listening to this by any chance, please don't say anything at work. I have not disclosed my pregnancy at work yet. That's actually part of the reason that I waited this long to disclose in the podcast, because I know some of my coworkers follow. I will disclose the pregnancy at work. I'm not going to do it for another couple weeks. And so please just let's just pretend that you didn't hear this. And then when I tell you in person, when I tell you later, you can, we can pretend like it was a big surprise. So I would really appreciate that, coworkers. If you are somebody I know in real life who is not a coworker and you're finding this out via the podcast because I forgot to tell you in real life, wow, I'm sorry. That's definitely possible. I am a disaster. So also very sorry, very, very sorry if that's the case. And please feel free to text me. You do not get the coworker pretend you never heard memo. That's a different situation. And then the last thing that I wanted to say before we move on is, if you're a listener of this podcast, you've probably lost a child, and news like this can be really hard. I know that. I have been that person who's getting a pregnancy announcement from a lost parent, and it feels shitty. If this feels shitty, that's okay. That is okay. I am okay with that. You can hate me. Judith has said this about her pregnancies. You can hate me. That's fine. I can handle it. I know we have for a long time, the entirety of this podcast, 3 years, almost 3 years, I have filled a niche of the lost parent who doesn't have a subsequent child. And I can imagine that felt comforting and safe for a lot of people, and that maybe finding out that I'm having a new baby, hopefully alive, is bittersweet. And I just want to acknowledge that's okay. And I'm not offended if you feel that way. And I want you to take care of yourselves. I do think we will talk about pregnancy after loss on the podcast, probably more than we have in the past, given that now we have both experienced it. Previously, Judith has been really respectful of me, and of course of all of you, and kept a lot of her pregnancy after loss thoughts to herself. But I think my impression is that this will kind of be our opportunity to talk pregnancy after loss on the podcast. We will try to put a notice in the description if that's a thing that we're planning to talk about in that episode. So if that doesn't feel safe for you, you can always skip it. And by the way, if you are somebody who is pregnant after loss and you're looking forward to this content that we probably are going to do, we do actually have a couple of episodes about that already. Judith did a wonderful interview with Katie Zane's mom of Breathing After Loss at Breathing After Loss on Instagram, about pregnancy after loss. And those were awesome interviews. So I will try to remember to link those in the description, and you can go listen to those now. And yeah. You know, I debated whether I wanted to separate the pregnancy announcement from Quinn's birthday. Like I don't want him to feel like I'm overshadowing his birthday with the pregnancy announcement. However, first of all, everybody, in real life knows, and I've also shared with so many of you via DM, it hasn't been like a total secret at all. This is not like the announcement, but so much of my experience of this pregnancy so far has actually been so intertwined. Obviously, you guys all know who had a subsequent child, it has been so intertwined with Quinn and his loss that it really feels appropriate to share on his birthday. And I also feel like he's so happy and excited. And I think he's I
think he's so happy and excited.
He would be 4. I think he'd be so jazzed to have a little sister and be talking about her on his birthday. I think he's an age where it wouldn't offend him at all. And he's dead. So what does he care? It feels nice.
I feel like for a lot of people, I'm still shocked. I'm still confused. and obviously I've known for some time, and I'm still like in a daze about the whole thing. Like I'm still a little bit in denial, in a good way, not in a bad way. I'm in denial in a good way, where I like just doesn't feel true because it's such exciting good news. But I mean, like, where have you been sitting with it? Like, how does it sit with you?
It sits well. I actually have so much to say on this topic, and I'm going to save most of my more recent thoughts on this for a separate episode. But overall, I just feel so joyful.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I feel like I made it.
Mm-hmm.
I look around and I'm like, oh my God, I have a husband again. I love him. I have a house again. I love where I live. I have a baby in my belly again. And it's also been so special, like, to bring it back to Quinn and his birthday too, like being pregnant again this time of year, although I'm significantly less pregnant now than I was when I was about to give birth to him, feels like I'm close to him again in like such a special way, like to wear my like fall maternity clothes and like walk around in the 70-degree weather. And I don't know, there's just something like really nice about it. I just love it.
Yeah, people have asked me that I've shared this with, have asked me like, how's Alina doing? And I'm like, she's great.
Yeah.
And they're like, how is she handling it? And I'm like it's not a thing. Like, she's so happy and she's so joyful. And I feel like, to me, the difference between getting pregnant 4 months after loss and 4 years after loss, like, it's a very different experience.
Now, I will say the episode we're about to record, so Judith hasn't heard all this yet. I went on a vacation last week. I had some big pregnancy after loss feelings. So stay tuned for an episode a couple weeks from now that I'm going to talk a lot more about like the parts that have been really, really challenging about it, because it's definitely challenging. But overall, I feel really mentally well. I feel significantly less traumatized than I would have been had I gotten pregnant right away. I am so happy. I definitely am like dissociating a little bit, like as a treat for funsies, like when things are really hard and I'm anxious, but like I'm not going to say I've been like super present and with it the way I was when I was pregnant with Quinn.
Yeah, but I think that was ridiculous.
Yeah. I think I went a little overboard.
I don't think you were normal. I think you were too unanxious last time. It's good to have a little dose of anxiety.
That was very Jewish of you to say.
Yeah, it makes me nervous how confident you were last time. I really think you should cool it with the confidence. You don't need to buy things forever for like, let's just be moderately anxious.
Yes. I ordered a pregnancy pillow last night, and that was a big step for me. That's the first like big item. It's not for the baby, it's for me, but it's the first item that's going to take up space in my home that I distinctly remember having to get rid of last time after he died. Because I had kept it after the pregnancy thinking, oh, well, when I have more children, I'll need my pregnancy pillow. And then, of course, my life fell apart. My marriage ended. The baby died. And I knew I was moving into an apartment. I was like, why would I keep this pregnancy pillow? Like, who the fuck knows when I'm going to have a pregnancy? So I had to throw it away, get rid of it in the dumpster because it was huge. And I ordered a new one last night.
That's a big deal.
That is my first like big purchase.
That's a really big deal.
I actually do feel like it's a really big deal.
I feel like it's a big deal.
Yeah. Maternity clothes have been complicated. I have a lot of yours, which is lovely. I have some stuff from my friend Leah, which is lovely, which has been helpful because like at first, even just opening the pregnancy clothes was like they smelled like the laundry detergent that I used when I lived in my old house. Like so many things. Like I think in some ways it's been so much easier because it's been so long. And in some ways it's so much harder because it really was like a time capsule of like the laundry detergent smell, which is just crazy that it would still be there after 4 years. But that's what happens when they're in an airtight bin. But overall, really, really happy. We got to spend the grief retreat pregnant together, which was kind of the dream.
Honestly, I was pretty physically uncomfortable, but
yeah, actually both of us were like not in a great spot. I was right in the thick of morning sickness. I threw up like on the way there. I threw up like half every morning or every evening we were there. We couldn't drink alcohol or get high.
But it was good. It was beautiful in its own magical, dreamy way.
We tie-dyed onesies.
But like the actual practicality of it was pretty physically uncomfortable. But the concept was so spot on.
Yes.
And you've just been glowing like the whole time. You've been so happy and so like your feet have been on the ground.
Yes, I think that's true.
Even though I know there have been hard parts and there's been anxiety, it's like you haven't lost yourself in the anxiety.
I think that's true.
Your feet have been on the ground. I know, like, we've already started talking a little bit about the nursery, which is like going to be a lot of fun for me.
I think you're going to have more fun with it than I am this time.
I am. I actually, when you were gone, I spent.
Which is true. That's how I felt about your kids' nurseries.
Yeah. Well, I have a lot of opinions about yours too. I was thinking about the wallpaper the other day. But I think that we spoke about two years ago at the grief retreat. One of the years, we were like, what if it was after I had my daughter? And you're like, what if we have the next ones together? And then for a while, it just didn't seem like it was going to happen because
the timing wasn't going
to jive. And then one of the things that I've learned from having my nephew is that even though for us, 1 year apart seems so different, and it's like they're not the same age, in the scheme of it, they're the same age. Like they play together, and our kids aren't going to be a year apart.
They're going to be 6 months.
Which is like the same exact class. Like they're going to be in the same class in school. But never mind that. Like when you're 29 versus 30, your friends, like who gives a shit if you're 29, your friends are 30? Like you're still friends with your friends, And I feel like that's what I would say to us.
Yeah.
Is I would say, Alina, like our kids are going to be friends. I know it feels like every single month that passes, it feels like so long, and it just feels like every single month is so disappointing. But the reality is your kids are going to be the same age as your friends' kids. Okay, maybe a year apart, maybe 2 years apart. Maybe for some of them, I think the most is 3 years apart. But when they're 27 and 30,
yeah, it's true.
It won't matter. Like I remember when you first, when Quinn first died, it just felt like everybody was moving on without you. But the reality is, like in your own time, in your own way, you're still in it.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It does. It does make sense. And like, when Quinn died, my friend Julia, who you guys heard from the podcast, was pregnant with her daughter. And her daughter just turned 3. And she is pregnant again. I hope that's okay for me to say on the podcast. She is pregnant again and having a daughter in November. And so despite the fact that we live far away from each other, like it also still feels like I'm like, oh, we're not like so far apart, like in life stage. Like it's still, even though she has a living 3-year-old, right? And I have a dead 4-year-old, like we're still going to have newborn baby girls at the same time. Like it's kind of crazy to think about that.
But when you first have that loss, it feels like you're 10 planets apart.
Oh yeah. I mean, 10 galaxies apart.
You're like, oh my God, I'm never, not catch up. I don't want to use the word catch up, but you're like, I'm never going to be able to be with my friends in my cohort again,
Yeah.
It feels like you're an eternity away from them.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have even believed it, so I wouldn't have said it out loud to you. But but like with hindsight, what I can look back and say is like, we made it.
We made it. I do feel like we made it. Now this baby better fucking live. She has had better live. A lot of pressure.
Now, when Alina told me that she was pregnant, I actually told a few people that you were pregnant this week. I haven't told anyone. I didn't tell my mom until last week, by the way, because
why?
I felt like I wanted to wait until you were telling people. I don't know. I just felt like it was not my news to share.
Oh, by the way, listeners, when we were doing the episode where we were interviewing Judith's sister and we were all hysterically crying, I was like having a hormonal meltdown crying. Like, oh, you were pregnant, Judith. Like she was crying. I mean, the whole thing was very emotional. I would have cried anyway, but I finished that episode. I was like, why was I crying for literally 3 hours? Oh, right. Because I'm pregnant. Like, and she didn't know. Ilana didn't know I was pregnant.
No, she didn't know. It just felt like, it didn't feel like my story to tell. But anyway, I recently did tell people, by the way.
Were they asking how I was doing?
They were asking. Everyone was asking how you're doing. And I said to everybody, like, she's doing really, really well. Oh, they all want to know about the gene and where you're at and mentally this healthy and whatever. And I always say this. I always say, well, I believe in God, so I have every confidence that God's going to make sure that this baby's okay, because it just feels so cruel otherwise. But Alina doesn't believe in God, so because she doesn't believe in God, like she's actually doing really, really well with it. But I would be so much more anxious. It's it's like a lot easier, I think, to like from the outside have a lot of faith in someone else's life than when you're in it yourself. Like I was 100% convinced all my children were going to die, but when you're on the outside, you're like, I see very clearly this baby will probably live. you know?
Yes.
But when you're in it, you don't believe that.
It doesn't feel that way.
Yeah.
No.
Well, I have a lot of confidence that this baby will live. It gives very alive vibes. The minute you found out you were pregnant, that's another thing, audience. When Alina found out she was pregnant, she didn't ever say to me, what if I miscarry? Or like every time when I got pregnant, both times, it was like I was waiting for the miscarriage. I would like check compulsively the lines and is it getting harder? Alina did not have that. You never one time thought you were going to miscarry this baby, by the way, in case you're wondering.
I don't think for one single second I thought I was going to miscarry.
No, you didn't.
However, I have been aware of the possibility all the time in a way I was not when Quinn was born. Like I would think in a very calm, I still do, in a very calm, rational manner. If I miscarried at this date, what would I have a DNC?
Okay, because Alina, let me tell you why. No, I'm serious. I want to tell you why, because I have those thoughts too.
Yeah.
And I think it's because you can handle it and you've handled it so much harder that you're like, okay, like if I lost
I'm literally like, what would be the logistics of
what would I need to do? Okay, I know what I would need to do. Okay, what would be hard for me? Okay, well, I would do it. Same thing with like buying clothes for this baby or buying whatever it is. It's like, okay, well, then I know if this baby dies, I will have to get rid of it. But instead of being afraid of getting rid of it, it's like, well, I know that that's what I would have to do. It's not scary for me because I know how to do it. I will get rid of it.
It's sad and traumatic, but it doesn't scare me.
It's sad and traumatic, but it's like much more like manageable when you're like, it doesn't feel like I would lose. You know, you're like, I know this is what I would do. I would find a dumpster.
Not for the baby, to be clear.
Not for this baby. No. This baby's going to be totally fine. I'm telling you, this baby gives such alive vibes. This baby has given alive vibes. First of all, this baby is a girl, which makes me so happy because, you know, I want to give you all the stuff for this baby. We already like picked a name.
Mm-hmm.
So we feel like really good. Like this baby is.
You've picked a name.
Well, you picked a name.
My husband's picked it. You and my husband have picked a name. I am not 100%.
There are other names that you like that I like more.
Judith and my husband have agreed on a name, yes.
But only because you guys agreed.
I know.
There are other names that I like more. The name that your husband chose is not my number one. So, but I just keep calling it that because I thought that's what it was. But I like other names more because the name that you like more, I like more.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I feel like I am not worried about the name at all because we have a list of names we both like and we will find the right one.
And I will call it whatever you want to call it.
I know.
But I do call it things because whenever I buy a new dress for my kid, I'll tell Alina, like, oh my God, I bought your daughter the greatest dress today. I'm like, it's so cute. I'm going to try and keep it clean.
All right. Well, listeners, that's the big news. Quinn is 4 this coming Sunday, I think, the 22nd, and his little sister's on the way.
What are you going to do to mark the day?
My husband and I are going to the cabin. We're going up to Maine.
Okay.
So I took a day and a half off of work, and I think, I know we'll get like cupcakes or something, and I usually just spend the day like half crying and kind of half just like, you know, sitting around staring off into space. I usually don't try to do anything big for the birthday. I just try to get through it. Same with the death anniversary. Do you plan on writing him a card? Yes. Oh, yes. Absolutely. I will write him a card. I haven't picked it out yet, but I have to go to CVS tomorrow to get a prescription, and I'm going to get a dead baby birthday card. It's going to be fun. Maybe I'll live stream it from the from CVS like I usually do. I think you should. Did you get your new COVID vaccine? Not yet, but I will. And my flu shot. I went last week. Is it bad? Well, no, that's not what I was going to say. I always think of Aiden when I get my COVID vaccine because I got my first COVID vaccine with Aiden. Then I got my second vaccine when he died. Right after he died. Like a couple of days later. Then I got my second COVID vaccine when my daughter was born. Like when I was newly pregnant with my daughter. Then I recently got the COVID vaccine with my son, my alive son. And every time I go to CVS, you said you were going to CVS. That's what made me think of it. Every time I go to CVS, and I've gone to CVS 10 billion times since he died, I always think of Aiden and I always think of the COVID vaccine. I always think like, like CVS, this is where I went with Aiden when I got my COVID vaccine. And it's part of it's their playlist. CVS has a very unique playlist, and they haven't updated it much since 2021. And every time I go to CVS, I'm like, oh, this is where they are in the playlist because
I don't know. I just have like very strong feelings about CVS. Had you said you were going to Walgreens for the card, I would have nothing to add. But you're going to CVS.
I'm going to CVS.
I was just there last week getting my COVID vaccine. And, they don't make you wait 15 minutes anymore.
Oh, really? But I actually do. I always have to wait because I have an allergy to nothing that's in the vaccine, but they just don't want me to have like a fucking heart attack. But I'll get it probably at the OB, no?
They didn't offer it to me. But what I was going to say is that at the CVS, they give you a coupon for $5 off, and they say spend 15 minutes in the store. And that's like their waiting period. They want you to go spend money, which is a brilliant idea. And I did do that. So, and I listened to the playlist and I walked around thinking to myself, like, oh my God, like.
Shout out to CVS. We love your vaccine program.
Every time I go to CVS, I think of my dead son on the corner of happy and healthy.
That's going to turn out controversial. Please, guys, we don't want to hear about vaccine controversy, okay? Seriously, I'm not interested.
Oh, please don't tell us about vaccine controversies. We're not asking for your input. We're just telling you the story of how I got my vaccine at CVS. But I don't mean to be rude, but...
Okay, well, that's that.
Okay, bye.
All right, thanks.
Thank you,
everybody.
Betsy.
Thank you, Betsy, and happy birthday to Quinn.
Happy birthday, Quinn.
To all of our wonderful new friends, we want to hear from you. Email us at aslongasimlivingpodcast@gmail.com and follow us on Instagram at aslongasimlivingpodcast. We'll get back to you as soon as our grieving brains allow. Yay!